Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Barrier O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and I hope this works. I
Yeah,
took all my computer knowledge and put it to work last night, and I stripped out all these garbage apps that are in this thing, and I tried to disable widgets, and I dumped that I don't know, that Microsoft thing, that whatever it's called. I can't remember its name. It was so bad. Edge. It's out, gone. Um,
yeah, get rid of
it's
it.
not like they sponsor the show anyway. You know what I mean?
No.
So fuck it. I mean, we're not doing the radio yet, so that's all right.
Yeah.
They're gone.
I had to put the explicit content warning out there now, Tim. All right.
Yeah. And then my computer, I guess, was trying to update. So I shut it off and turned it back on after I got rid of it. And I cleaned out the startup folder. And I
It's all
dumped
right.
a bunch of HP stuff, right? Like the HP stuff is always interrupting everything. They're like,
Yes.
hey, do you need some help with that? And it's like, hey, mind your own fucking business. You know what I mean? Like, go away. Just stop it. So anyway.
It's all good. It's probably Queeter, but you're late later than expected. I know. Listen, guys, as mentioned in our unfortunately unsuccessful show yesterday, I have a new baby, and so some baby stuff came up that I had to deal with.
Yeah.
So a little bit late. Sorry, y'all. We're gonna get started in a second though with the actual show. We'll get started at 2 minutes. For those of you tuning in for a second time, we're gonna talk about the National Guard folks in New York subways. We're gonna talk about the State of the Union. We're gonna talk about the budget.
No problem. It's
Yeah.
going to be good stuff. It's not what I like about it, Kevin, is it's not like a campaign bribe filled budget for all sorts of special interest groups oh wait, never mind.
There it is. All right. We're gonna go in though. For real. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Barrier O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. And man, it was a beautiful day in my neck of the woods today. I'm a little bit gassed out from doing a ton of hard work. I'm putting the final electrical details together on a big, huge solar project. And man, it was a stressful day, but it was a great day. It was an absolutely great day.
Yeah, man, that sounds tough. See, I'm on parental leave, so I was outside just like holding the baby for a while.
Fresh air. Those kids need fresh air. It's a good call.
Fresh air, yeah. No, got outside. It's 70 degrees out. How could I not just hang out outside? I got all my backyard furniture set up.
Nice.
So I'm like, I don't care. I'm gonna risk. It's probably gonna snow like 4 feet next week, but I'm gonna set it all up because why do I have this if I'm not enjoying it on a day like this?
Yeah, and look, WYSL audience, if you didn't miss that, Kevin Wilson is a dad again for the second time. He's doing his part. 2. Yeah, he's doing his part to fight the declining population growth in the United States. And guys, I'm at the tail end of that. Like, I don't think I got any more kids on the way. I just want to thank Kevin and his wife and congratulate them for well, it's a sacrifice, Kevin. It's a big deal. It takes up a lot of your time. And
it does. As it turns out, kids are time consuming. Yeah,
they are. But man, it was always worth it. I love my kids. I miss my kids. They're all kind of growing up on me. So, dude, enjoy it. Enjoy those moments, even the stressful ones, man. Enjoy it. I'm happy for you.
It's fun. And John Tuman on YouTube asks a cameo of the newest Mr. Wilson. No, he's eating right now, but and not particularly cooperative. He's a big advocate when he wants stuff. He's noisy, like hungry little kid, which is great. Love to hear it, but he's a noisy kid, which is it's good. And I don't know, but he's good baby, strong, healthy. It's
and like Thomas Daniel Queeter says out there in Facebook land, children are the future of the.
Yeah, children add to the future GDP. There we go. And I guess that's one way to think of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But all right, so besides my being a dad again, which is awesome, and super excited to have happen. We are gonna talk about some politics and policy stuff. So
Gotta.
Tim, let's kick it off with something that kind of happened like last week when I was in the fog of new parenthood. The governor of New York deciding to put National Guard folks on the New York City subway system. I want to talk about that a little bit. So, Tim, you want to lay that out a little bit?
Well, as usual, Kevin, I was getting my news from Twitter, and Paul Krugman, early last week, the Nobel Prize winning economist, and bear with me, you're going to want to see how this ties in, was going on about how people have been putting down New York City, and it's such a wonderful place to visit. And the very next day or the day after, they're announcing that they have 750 to 1,000 New York State guards people checking bags and making sure that the subway is safe. Which to me, Kevin, kind of implies that perhaps maybe it's not. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it seems like there's some concern for safety on the New York City subway system, and it's interesting that because like this has been a thing for a while, right? Like, well, it's not been a thing for. It's been a growing concern for residents in New York City, as it is with like many other areas. There's been an increase in crime over the last few years relative to like prior to COVID, right? Like after COVID, crime spiked a bit, including violent crime, and in places like the New York City subway system, and that kind of coincided with the whole Black Lives Matter movement and the kind of hesitancy to use the police to solve like quality of life issues like violence in a mass transit system.
Right, right. And here we are. Like people are drawing this juxtaposition, Kevin, and what I want to talk about, they're saying, look, we're defunding the police, and now
Mm-hmm.
we have to call in the National Guard, and they're kind of like pwning everyone with that. They're kind of like, that's such an own, and it's like that was a
Yes,
big lie anyway, right? Like they didn't
yeah, I
defund
mean,
nothing.
the crazy part is like we probably could have found a middle ground there, right?
I
Like
thought so.
like we could have found a middle ground between police doing like nothing and bringing in the National Guard to search literally everyone's bags as they enter like their daily commute. Like
Yeah,
I get the feeling there's somewhere in between those two things, and like I
yeah.
saw the pictures of like the New York City police officers like just sitting on their phone playing games or whatever. I mean, whatever they were doing, and like
Yeah,
as like crime is
texting.
happening around them.
Yeah,
Um, and then yeah, like this is the next escalation. Instead of like, hey, we're gonna get more serious about fare jumpers and violence, and we're gonna ask that police intervene when they see a violent incident happen, which they don't always do. Sometimes they just they don't do anything.
yeah.
They don't have to. There's that famous case, because we've talked about it on the show before, that case of like the violent like knife attack that happened on the New York City subway, and then the victim of that attack ended up trying to sue the police department, and the Supreme Court basically said no, police have no obligation to intervene in these situations.
Which was bone chilling for a lot of people,
Yeah.
and yet people still don't seem to realize that's it's they took to protect and serve off the cars for a reason, and that's because they have no real obligation to put themselves in harm's way to protect you from a violent crime. And I don't know if that's right or wrong, but what I'm saying is people's impression is of that is slightly different than the reality. Let's put it that way. That's probably the nicest way to put it.
Yeah, that is probably true. So what we got here then, and going back to the actual situation at hand, is Governor Hochul has said, well, we're gonna have these National Guard folks just to get things under control, right?
Hmm.
And they're gonna be searching bags, part of her whatever, like her 5-point system. And one of the other interesting things, like, so two things about this. One is basically like, well, what if people refuse to search? And she's basically, well, then they're not gonna then they're not going to ride the subway. They're not going to be able to do the daily commute. I mean, Fourth Amendment. Who's heard of it, right? And the other thing is that, and I don't know if this is going to be enforceable or not. Is she said that if you have a violent felony, that they're going to try to ban you from that system. And I don't know. I don't know if I like it, and I don't know if it's enforceable anyway. Tim, any thoughts on those two things?
Well, in a way, it's an issue of public property. It's a property that's in the government's hands, at least on like 90% level. So can they ban a former violent felon? Can they ban somebody for an egregious assault? Can they trespass people off of that? I think that that's a legal issue that people could win. Like a properly aggressive lawyer could say, well, you can't ban this guy and now you owe him, lifetime of free transportation plus $100,000. Like, I do think you're right. I think it's a case that they would lose, and I think it's a case that will cost them a lot of money.
Well, and here's the thing too, is I don't know how they would enforce it, right? So one of two things can happen in that situation. Let's say that's a policy that they actually pursue, right? And say, okay, if you've committed a violent felony in the past, you are no longer allowed to ride the New York Metro system. So in addition to some of the legal issues there, how are they going to enforce it? Either they don't enforce it and they just say oh yeah, well, we'll check it and we'll ticket people who are riding and they're not allowed to, or they have to enforce it by checking the ID of every single person who's getting on the system.
Well, Kevin, isn't it? It's simpler than that. They could just make a law that everybody gets implanted with a chip that matches their basically their lifetime. Has their crime history on it, their health history on it, and the National Guard guys can just read it with an iPhone type thing, and then they'll know who that guy is,
right? So they'll just have National Guard troops in there, out with their long guns, and they'll just check everyone's microchips every morning. Just to know if you are allowed, China, they're the ones innovating in this space, right? They're the ones who are saying they have their social credit system, and they check you every day. You're riding the subway outside the area you're supposed to be riding it. Well, they're going to shut it down. You're not allowed to be there. So we just got to emulate China a little bit more. That's
right. And the government can get involved if you're late for work. Like if you check in 5 minutes late at your subway station and you don't catch the next train, they can kind of send you an email to remind you to get up earlier the next day. Maybe they even make a phone call on your behalf. You know what I mean? To kind of nudge you in the proper tax earning direction. You know what I mean? You got to get out there and produce for the government. So, I mean, it's a pretty simple solution. I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, she wants the law specifically is she's state law blocks judges or that blocks people from riding subway or buses for 3 years if they're convicted of attacking a passenger.
Yeah.
Is the
good
specific
for her.
Thing. Which again, it's interesting. It's just the enforcement's either impossible or draconian, right? There's no I don't think there's a good clean way to enforce it that doesn't turn into a total dystopian situation.
I mean, Kevin, honestly, sure, I'm making jokes, but I'm making jokes because I'm wildly uncomfortable with this notion. I'm wildly uncomfortable with people being searched, and we're right back to stop and frisk, but it's not in a high crime neighborhood at the request of the people in the neighborhood. It's in the subways. We have a situation where, and again, I'll point at the government's response to COVID, that there is an uptick in violence. There is people's lives were destroyed, disrupted, disjointed. There is an underscore that the economy, and we'll talk more about it when we get to the State of the Union address, but that the economy is doing really well. And all over the world, we're seeing these upticks in violence, including New York City subways. So I'm not buying the metrics because violence is a reaction to increasing poverty, to drug addiction, all sorts of things that are not being handled correctly by the government. And I'm not sure that the government, honestly, I'm sure that the government can't handle them correctly anyway. That's always been one of our talking points. And here we are, more proof. I do want to circle back around to something though, Kevin, and it's more good news. The National Guard is banned from carrying long guns in New York City. So
well, there's that, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, they can search you, but they can't really carry guns. So it's okay.
Oh,
It's a
well, good.
trade-off.
We're safe then. Um,
Yeah.
so well, let me get to a couple of these comments though. So Sam on YouTube says, "Yay for our literal police state. So happy they have once again proven libertarians' rights." And he says, "Just use the National Guard, automated turrets, and facial recognition, just like every dystopian story ever."
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
that, man. It's just thinking ahead that this is where it's gonna go. Um, and and actually, Kate, I'm gonna shift gears a little bit because we have a few minutes left, enough time to talk about it. I think it's kind of related. It's related to the disorder that people feel in certain cities and like the weird kind of like pendulum swing that we're getting on this stuff. So I want to talk about like the recriminalization of drugs in Oregon.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
let's get to that. That's a good one.
yeah, because I think like this impulse, because again, this is a Democratic governor in a Democratic city doing this thing in New York, and it's the same thing. It's like the far lefties who've like freaked out at the consequences of what they've done and don't have like the fortitude to find like new and innovative ways of dealing with disorder in the systems that they created because they didn't think through the consequences and then don't have like the fortitude to like stand by their convictions and in terms of things like drug decriminalization and criminal justice reform. Like to me, like I'm coming at this from like a libertarian. Like I think this is bad, right? Like I know there's some WYSL audience folks out there who are like, good, they're recriminalizing drugs. They should never decriminalize them in the first place. That was like a lefty farce. But like to me, I'm
Right.
like, we shouldn't be throwing people in jail for like being addicted to a substance. And that's exactly what they're proposing again in Oregon, because what's happening on the streets of cities like Portland is like there's a lot of folks who are like just strung out. They're out. The cities aren't willing to do anything about like homeless encampments and people on the street, and folks are dying on streets of fentanyl. Like it's a real legitimate problem. I don't want to like there's some folks who want to like brush down their rug. It's a real problem, right?
Sure.
Like
Look, that kind of misery is a real problem. We want, if we're trying to grow life in a future, we want that to be someplace else, or we more importantly want that to not be happening. So, but is the answer to criminalize people? Portland did. I read an article and I didn't pull it up tonight, Kevin, but they were kind of talking like we're going to recriminalize this, but we're going to kind of try to keep it to $100 fines, and we're going to offer the opportunity of expunging your record if you participate in a rehab program, or if you find housing, or if you make yourself less of a menace immediately through some effort right away. We're going
right.
to roll back our punitive measures. So they're, they at least they're trying. But look, there's there's other problems here. That why are people in the streets doing drugs? Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing cool about that. Like, what's the misery index for that? Why are people doing those things? And again, I go to the reckless response to COVID, a GDP that's growing through inflation. I'm going to, like, growth in jobs or
Yeah.
government jobs, and that people that are living on the streets are not going to get a government job. I mean, these things are real. Like, people that are living on the streets are going to get work from a contractor who has cash in his pocket, and they're criminalizing that, Kevin. So it's like the system is broken. Like, that's the reality. And every time they try to fix it, Kevin, they break it worse. So here we
Yeah.
are. Maybe Portland won't break it worse, but that's what I suspect is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean that's I agree. It's the situation where like they've created this. They like it because this happens in both in terms of like disorder you're seeing here and in the business climate that you see in many states, especially New York, is like
Mhm.
they create conditions where like it's impossible for people to succeed, right? And then they find like some other thing to latch onto. Oh, it's the drugs. No, what's the underlying issue? How are
Right.
people getting to that point? And then, their only solution is, well, we want this to go away, so we're gonna throw people in cages, right? Like that's what you end up turning back to. And
Yeah.
and and I know there's gonna be some like maybe softer enforcement than what they had under their previous like drug
Sure.
criminalization regime, but you're still giving police the option to throw people in jail. It's not
Yeah.
the right way to deal with this, in my opinion. And like there has to be another way around it. It's again setting the conditions right so that people don't get to that point. It's actually like because they kind of dropped the ball that what was supposed to happen with the decriminalization stuff was they're supposed to like provide all this stuff to have extra funding go to like clinics and
Right.
treatment facilities and all this stuff, and that didn't like go through for a couple years, and even the rollout
Right.
was sort of botched. It's just like, man, like I wish government could do this stuff competently because like I get that there's a okay, if we're not going to enforce this in this way, right? If we're not going to enforce it by dragging people off the street and throwing them in a cage, then like we need to give an alternative to that, right? So set up the
Right.
alternative to that and make it effective instead of
Yeah.
just
Well,
I don't know.
they were probably expecting BlackRock and its like many guises to come up with a no bid contract to take care of drug addiction, and BlackRock just wasn't nimble enough at that point. They're too busy, investing in zoning laws in big cities that are up and coming. So like that, they have their priorities, man. They're too busy getting ready to rebuild Ukraine. Like the, they
That's,
have their
where's it?
priorities,
We're gonna
Kevin.
go all the way down the conspiracy hole, right? Like, is it BlackRock?
With BlackRock, Halliburton makes BlackRock look like BlackRock makes Halliburton look like small potatoes, bro. They're
Oh my
huge. They
goodness.
create businesses to siphon money from the government with no bid contracts. That's I don't know if it's a conspiracy, but it's a theory, and I've seen evidence of it.
It's
I'll present it on the show one of these nights.
all right, man. Like I'm ready to talk about the housing one because that one, I mean, there's some
Yeah,
shady stuff. I'll give you like we talked about the detention centers and no bid contracts with that.
sure.
Yeah, it's not great. But the housing one, I don't think they're the problem. I think that the government is once again the problem, not a corporation. But on that
No,
note,
no.
we're gonna have to
Yeah,
head the break because we're running out of time. Yeah, I'll let you rebuttal in the break, Tim.
yeah.
And if you listen at WISL, go find our podcast so you can hear this type of stuff. We're gonna be back here on A Free Solution in just a minute. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, no, the rebuttal is they are very targeted. Like I get what you're saying that they own a very small percentage overall of residential property, right? Like I get it. Um, but they are they are seeking profit and they are a rent seeking organization, right? That's what they do. Not like the rent seeking in the way that the communists talk about it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Where we just make money by owning shit. That's it. And that's BlackRock.
Yeah.
So,
And say the way I look at them is they are fungus feasting on a carcass. I don't blame the
sure.
fungus for getting over there. It's just gonna do what fungus does. BlackRock is the same thing.
Absolutely.
They're gonna go seek the profit, and if government is creating a rent-seeking situation, it is imperative that the government do something about that, right? The
Like
only
what
reason that they
though?
can
Give them money? That's what they're
no,
doing.
no,
You know
no.
what I
What
mean?
what what they can do, the reason why they can thrive in cities like Charlotte, and what was the other one? I think it was also another Carolina city. Um,
Yeah.
the reason why they're buying up properties in those places because the zoning is so onerous in those areas. No one can build a dang thing, so
Yeah.
they can just buy up these properties, put nothing into them, and then resell them for a 50-100% markup. Why wouldn't they do that? What like if you're looking to make a buck, why wouldn't you do that? Like it
No,
makes
no.
sense.
I am not criticizing the philosophy behind BlackRock. Like certainly to have that kind of money and to be able to strategize those kind of situations is absolutely epic.
Yeah.
I think we probably agree, even though
It's, I was
I'm
like,
a little bit more conspiratorial about the way I'm presenting it. Like
or
BlackRock
you think like, oh,
existing
they're like
isn't the
paying off
problem.
city officials or influencing city officials to keep zoning too restrictive or something. And it's
I'd be more than willing to posit that they would encourage more zoning and that people would be responsive to it because people look, I look at what's going on in Oneonta, New York, and the city council chases money for developers, their preferred developer, right? And so they're now in the business of starting new housing projects all the time, right? And they chase grant money to get them started. And they chase grant money to tear old buildings down. And they chase grant money that goes to basically one big construction dude. And so
yeah, well,
I don't know if
it's a
he's a
thing. No,
you know,
it's a thing in a lot of places. It's a like an issue in Rochester too, like related to
right.
subsidies and grants, and like it's not one company, but it's like a handful of companies where again,
Sure.
companies are going to do what companies do. I
Make
see
money.
I see capitalists, I see corporations as like value neutral. What they're going to do is they're going to go try to make money, and if that
Right.
making money is like leeching off the government, that's what they're going to do. Like it's important for our political leaders to not make a system where they enable that sort of behavior.
Right. So I see it
Um,
as inherently evil on some level that amount of collaboration exists, and that history is like replete with the government going into business with corporations and turning it into a freaking disaster. Do you see what I mean? Like,
yeah.
and we're not learning from that.
Yeah, we need to do something. And John, I don't know if I haven't set up to do this in the show. John's asking John on YouTube that didn't Rachel Barnhart posted on that today. So she's posted on a number of things. The thing she was talking about like the last day or so is the county is giving something like 7.8 million. I hope I'm getting the number right. They're giving a bunch of money to like try to support affordable housing. But functionally, what they're doing is they're giving a lot of it away to like landlords and developers for making improvements to housing and to try to provide incentives to like basically subsidize affordable housing. And then basically what they're doing is just subsidizing demand. Like that's what they're doing. They're just subsidizing demand again. Like, okay, let's just give a bunch of money to developers and landlords and a bunch of other stuff when all they need to do, all the county, the city, all they need to do, just make it easier to build stuff. That's it. Just make it easier to build shit. Like that's the free solution. Build stuff. Make it
Build
easier to
stuff.
build stuff. They will
Make
build stuff.
laws that are make it easier to build stuff. And
Yeah.
instead, I feel like the government is constricting lumber markets. They're constricting siding markets. They're constricting every market possible that they can get their greedy little mitts in, and then add zoning, and then add
Well,
making
it's
their favorite developer rich. Do you see what I mean?
yeah,
Like
right. It's like again, like I don't. You see this as intentional. I see this as like farce and like incompetence, right? And we always have this disagreement here. Like, but to me, it's like
sure.
they keep coming back to this point where like, oh man, we have to subsidize developers because it's just so hard to build stuff here. And I'm like, then make it easier to build stuff here. Make it like easier for people to be able to build stuff and make a profit without you having to pay 50% of the cost or give them tax subsidies or tax breaks. And what do you call them? There's but basically payment in lieu of taxes for 40
Right.
years.
No, look, I think that where we disagree is that you don't see it as an intentional product of the system. You're saying somehow accidentally these things came into to play. I'm saying it's so obviously bad that and while it continues to continue, how stupid do they have to be to allow that to go on? And so at some
And
point
they're
I
either
can't
very,
accept
very
that they're
stupid or they're in on it.
right. I
Yeah.
can't accept that they're that stupid that they don't see the realities that they're presenting. That's where our difference is. It's more of a scope and scale difference than a hey, no, you're totally wrong about that. Here's what I'm saying that's right. It's not that. We agree that what's happening is bad. We agree that there's some amount of incompetence. I'm saying it looks more like incredible repeating corruption because then they get to answer their virtue, they get to signal their kindness. So the people that are running the show, or the politicians that are participating in the show, get to signal their virtue,
Mhm.
and they chase money for a guy that's already rich. You see what I mean? Like I don't know. I get that would be uncomfortable for a young guy who's just like, you'll get here, Kevin. You'll get here.
All right. We'll see. We should go back to the show in just a minute, but I want to give some real quick context because throughout the name Rachel Barnhart, if you're listening to this outside of Monroe County, she's a county legislator and has also run for like mayor and is very active on social media on Twitter. So she was my
Good for
county
her.
legislator for a while, but
Yeah. Well,
anyway,
good.
yeah.
I'm sure that you find her tweets very entertaining. Let's put it that way.
She is quite progressive, but also correctly calls out corruption a lot. It's one of those things where she's right on the corruption side, and then has progressive tweets where we're like, nope, that's bonkers. It's how I often feel about Bernie Sanders. I'm like, oh hey, like you correctly identified the problem and then came up with the most insane solution possible that would make everything worse.
I feel very similarly that's why when I converse with liberals, we find lots of common ground, right? They don't want to go as far as me. And look, when I converse with Trump supporters, it's the same thing, Kevin. I'm like, they're like, hey, Trump, I'm going to vote for Trump. And I'm like, okay, he's the guy that started this whole mess with, the he looted the treasury. He got rolled with the government response to COVID. And you're telling me he's a guy that we should vote for. And it's like, I get it. I get it. I get where you're coming from. But then I try to tell him what the good things that he actually did. They're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And like the bad things, like when he had that moment in time where he shut down the government for a week and then said, and if you guys do this again, I'm really going to shut down the government. And we all knew he was lying. It was like Snowball walked on 2 feet too. That was what it was. You know what I mean? The shine was gone for me on Trump.
Yeah.
So,
well, there it is. So we should actually go back though. Sorry, I said we're gonna go back and then we're talking for another couple minutes. My bad.
Sorry, no, that's my fault. I very much enjoy when you and I are so close to disagreeing on a subject that we agree on. That it's good to hammer it out. It's a blast. Actually, I enjoy it.
All right. Well, let's go back to the show in 3, 2. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. I'm here. Like you guys missed me and Kevin literally coming to internet blows during the break. But welcome back to the WYSL audience. We love you guys too. Feel free to join us in some of our other endeavors and catch the content that doesn't make it to the radio, because some of the things I say can't even go on the radio, to be honest with you.
It is true sometimes. But we oftentimes during breaks and after show we keep talking about stuff. So if you're like, did you keep that conversation going? A lot of times, yeah. And this time we kept the conversation going about BlackRock and then went into a couple other things as well. But anyway, so Tim, I think we're gonna jump to a new topic now. We're gonna talk about the State of the Union stuff.
All right,
Tim, is the State of the Union strong?
Well, look, I always got to fall back on the fact that no matter what, I'm proud to be an American. That I think Americans are among the best people in the world. That we all, Kevin, all of us guys, even Joe Biden supporters, even some hardcore lefties, even Bernie Sanders, we all have good intentions that we want a better world for our children, our friends, and our family. So is the State of the Union strong? Yes. Is it great? Is it what Joe Biden said it was? No. And can we do better? Yes, we absolutely have to. We have to. What do you think about that little State of the Union, Tim's State of the Union?
That's yeah, sure. I mean, I agree with your civic nationalism, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't actually have like all that strong feelings on a lot of stuff in the State of the Union, other than the fact that like there's like a few things that ended up coming out like around that, like, oh, we're gonna decriminalize marijuana.
Okay.
Which great, man. Like who increased the penalties for that? Like who is the guy who did that? Man, right. we should really punish that guy. Oh, right.
We should, right?
Yeah, it's Joe Biden. Shoot.
Imagine that.
Yeah. No one should be jailed for using or possessing marijuana. Okay, cool. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, like we should do that. Like someone with executive authority should like deschedule marijuana. Just do that immediately.
Look, it's a medicine. Some of the many compounds that it offers are being wildly overcharged for by big pharma, okay, because it's still a Schedule, and it's a real problem. So, yeah, decriminalize it. Take it off Schedule 1. Do all of those things, and let's take advantage of the benefits of this. People like getting high. That's none of my business. I like drinking beer, you know? What do you think about that,
Yeah.
Kevin?
I agree with you. You should be able to do that and not go to jail. I mean, so I'd almost take it further. But we talked about that last segment, so I won't dive into it.
Yeah, but look, so I think you brought up a good point that people want to talk about. How does a guy like Joe Biden escape the consequences of his decisions for 50 years? Okay, like this guy was was a racist, was a segregationist, like now he wants to be all of a sudden this kind progressive dude, and there's no accountability for it. And like he was a plagiarist. These are all things that he really did. And here we are. He's the president of the United States,
He
and
sure is.
he's not writing his own tweets. He's lying about GDP. He's lying about the growth in the middle class income. I think, I don't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm kind of ranting tonight. I apologize, everybody.
It's all right. It's a good show for ranting. That's just how it is. But so he had that stuff again. It would be great if there's some actual substance behind it and accountability behind it. And we do have to talk about, like, because he acknowledges a handful of problems, right? Like like the rising home costs, right? But
Sure.
one of the issues with it is he talks about, like, well, we're gonna do some more tax credits, and we're gonna do was it like $5,000 towards like first time home buyers and things like that.
Yeah,
And
sure.
and again, it just they correctly identify that, like, they shouldn't be, that we need to do something about housing. But instead of doing what Trump actually tried to do temporarily, he kind of backed down on it. But doing what Trump tried to do through, oh my goodness, who is the guy, the doctor who was the HUD chief for a minute there? Oh, I can't remember his name.
Okay.
But anyway, so yeah, I know. I'm gonna remember his name like immediately after the segment's over. But like they tried to basically say, okay, we're gonna withhold some federal funds unless you do zoning reform, right? So like for a minute there, that's what they tried to do. And Ben Carson, thank you. I'm like, man, I just blanked on Ben Carson's name. My goodness, thank you, Steve Becker on Facebook.
I thought Ben Carson was actually like the Surgeon General for a bit. So like he got stored in the wrong office in my brain.
Yeah, you'd think so, but no, he was HUD.
Okay, that's wild.
Yeah, so thank you, Steve, for Dr. Becker, for assisting me in my sleep deprived brain.
Yeah, it's because I have a baby. Favorite for the vice presidential seat with Donald J. Trump. By the way, that's according to all the betting lines. He's most likely going to be the VP candidate.
Yeah, but no, but basically what the Biden administration is doing is, okay, yes, we're acknowledging we're gonna try to lower housing costs. And then what are they doing? Then, well, we'll sort of like mention zoning reform, but not actually do any concrete actions to do anything about it. And then again, subsidized demand. That's just it. It's okay. That like it's the only solution that progressives in the Republican and Democratic Party can think of, because it's the only, like my theory of like toxic politics is somewhat different than you, in that a lot of government action, a lot of politician action, is they will do stuff that they can take credit for, right? Like they want to be the ones coming in and being the heroes. And I kind of talked about this in a local way too, like during the break when I talked about like the county executive like subsidizing the band too, like subsidizing landlords. They want to be the heroes. They want to be the one like, hey, we're giving you all this money. You're welcome. We're fixing the problem. They can't take credit in the same way if it's, we're going to get out of the way and let you guys fix the problem. Like a lot of politicians don't like that. They're nervous about that. They think, other than, Javier Milei down in Argentina, but a lot of politicians in the US, they're like, oh, well, like, what if something goes wrong? Or what if they do something I don't like? Or what if I can't take credit for it? God forbid you can't take credit for it.
Yeah,
No,
and what if everybody gets mad and jealous at all the, up and coming middle class landlords, like, and they blame me for that? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
so I don't think it's one of those issues where we're not that far apart. I certainly think that they want to signal their virtue. They want accolades from their constituents. And
Yeah.
so that causes them to participate in what I'm calling corruption. I'm not actually suggesting that they get paid off. I'm thinking more along the lines of they get they talk to a developer, a big developer, and the developer says, "Hey, what would be really good is if we got rid of these kind of restrictions, like make sure lots are a certain size and make sure, you can't put a third story on a house because then that enhances the value of my property." You know what I mean? I think it's that kind of thing, and it allows them to take that to their constituents and say, "Hey, I did you this big favor on behalf of this guy." But they don't say
Yeah.
on behalf of this guy.
It's,
Arguably. I
it's
think there's a
a,
flaw in that.
yeah. I mean, like you have this thing, and like my thing is like straight is just they're trying to buy votes, right? Like it's like
Yeah,
they're bribing
absolutely.
us with their own money. Like that's what it
They
is.
are. And look, I want to introduce into our conversation and into everybody's lexicon, and it's going to be quite a challenge, but we need to talk about market distortions more often. So when Joe Biden subsidizes first time homebuyers, it's a market distortion. It increases demand, which raises prices, and it's an artificial increase in demand. Therefore, it's an artificial increase in price. Therefore, it contributes to devaluing our currency. Does that make sense? I know it sounds a little circular, but if we get to the bottom of this and we wonder why we can buy less with our money, it's because the government distorts markets all the time.
Yeah.
At least in part. I know that
No,
a blanket statement like that is rough, but I don't care. I'll
they
make it.
do that constantly, that's and it's one of those things where like people don't really like see or acknowledge that particular distortion. And we talk about this all the time. Is like that's get back down to the fundamental problem. Like get back down to like, well, what caused these issues in the first place? What caused these issues with higher housing costs? What caused these issues with like violence and on the streets in New York City? Like, don't just look at like how do we come in as government to save it, but like what were the underlying issues that created the conditions that allowed for disorder and high prices in distorted markets in different situations where you've created like government regulatory capture and the ability of a couple companies to dominate particular markets or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
all
So
right, but go ahead.
yeah, I'm with you. I got a couple more criticisms of the State of the Union. Um, and look, I, I don't care like whether you like Trump or don't like Trump. Trump is not literally Hitler. Trump is not literally Putin. Okay. And Joe Biden did a little bit of like inferential kind of like wandering in the very opening of his State of the Union that was
Oh
kind
yeah,
of like Putin is Trump, Trump is Putin, and I'm here to fight World War 17 and take it to these guys. But we can fight them with democracy right
like
now and
the
our
stuff on
money. Well,
Ukraine.
your money. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I hate that. It's a shoddy way to communicate. It's inaccurate, and it's an emotional like attack on people that are already overly emotional. You know what I mean? It's like it drives me crazy.
yeah. Um, No, yeah, the Ukraine thing definitely. I knew you bring that up, and the I mean, it
Yeah,
basically just
predictable.
yeah, no, like they he said like the Republicans are dangerous. We need to fund this, and we knew that's where it's coming. I mean, I actually I tweeted this out there that I don't want to go down this rant too much, but
Yeah,
like it funding Ukraine's like really politically popular. Like it's very popular. So it's interesting that like there's even as much resistance to it as there is. Um
yeah,
like when they've done surveys like 75% of people are like, yeah, like we should be funding this war. Um maybe that poll skewed, but like I've seen a couple of those out there where um and I'm not saying they're right. I'm just saying it's popular.
right. It's popular, but I well, I think popularity is waning. I think people are recognizing that it's a financial boondoggle, but I also think that people seem to remain completely unaware that the deficit has consequences, that devaluation is real, that inflation, a lot of people recognize that inflation is a problem, and they're not quite buying the narrative that inflation is under control. So that's I see that as a
Yeah.
net positive, but I don't think they're actually all the
Oh,
way there. Like they're
right.
not really as upset
But
as they should be.
Biden's doing
That's it.
something about it. He's talking about shrinkflation, and he's going to hold the
Mhm.
corporations accountable for it. Like, thank
Right.
goodness.
And when we let him point his ugly, angry finger at corporations for inflation, and fully 40 to 50% of the population does allow him to do that without any questioning at all of his narrative,
Yeah.
that creates the problem, or that furthers the problem. I did, Kevin, go to USA Today, and they got some fact checks on this joker that USA Today is pretty middle of the road. They kind
Yeah.
of don't really take hard shots at people. Um, so they did take a shot at Biden for him bragging about how his the deficit is down over $1 trillion, which I enjoyed that. Basically, they referred to the fact that his deficit is down from the COVID lockdown economy, which, and again, not enough can be made of him making stories out of, you know, hey, we lifted the lockdown. Things kind of went back to normal. Now we're getting some normal production
Yeah.
in GDP. Like, I don't know
Right.
why the world lets him get away with that. But
No,
USA Today called him to account for
I'm
that.
glad they called him out on it, because that's what it drives me bananas that he keeps doing it, and he keeps saying like, "Oh yeah, I'm cutting the deficit." Like, okay,
Yeah,
you are just cutting what you arbitrarily decided was like the budget. If you looked at 2020 and 2021, and then said,
right,
"Oh, I'm spending less than we could have spent, so therefore I'm cutting money." No, that's not how it works. He's not.
right.
Not actually reducing the debt in any way. You're still doing trillions of dollars in deficit spending, which is way more than what we're doing like 10 years ago. And you're pretending like you're saving us money. It's a joke to anyone who thinks about it for 2 seconds.
Right. So exactly. They did call out him misquoting Trump, even though he wasn't mentioning Trump by name, and exaggerating or basically criticizing him for taking Trump's words out of context. Which,
Yeah.
guys, like WSL, that I don't really like Trump, but I do call out the mainstream media, and USA Today actually did what I consider to be journalism. They actually brought
Amazing.
it and said, "Hey, Trump didn't say that exactly what the way Joe Biden framed it." And they're not supporting Trump, believe me. They're not a big
Yeah.
Trump fan paper. They're not like the New York Post or something like that. So I thought it was okay. I think there's a market for this kind of discussion in our society. They framed it very
Yeah.
politely, but they did call it out.
All right. Well, on that note, though, that journalistic note, we're going to have to hit the break. Thanks again for joining us here on Free Solution on WSL. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
You can't see me laugh, like, you were making me
Yeah.
that on that journalistic note, yeah, I almost lost it. That was great. And, like, look, like, the USA Today is not a bastion of credible journalism, but it's also not the worst paper out there, you know what I mean? They're not just engaged in the fact check guys. If I had access to the chat, I would share that article with you, but it's actually, just look it up. USA Today fact checks. They had 5 or 6 reporters come up with stuff that they found to be critical. They did not go after Bidenomics the way that I would have, and they're not talking about how GDP is largely an inflated number, and that they're crowing about growth that doesn't surpass the inflation rate over the last few years. That
Right.
a distinct percentage of our GDP is bomb making. Okay, they don't call, and look, too many politicians and Victoria Nuland, Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, they're all talking about, hey, they used to lie about this, like, but hey, making bombs is really great for the American economy. And it's like, we used to not even we used to not say that. And I wish that people weren't buying into that as it's a great strategy. This
Yeah.
it, it makes me sad. So So, anyways,
So,
I'm awfully ranty
what?
tonight, Kevin. I'm emotional.
Yeah.
Must be my long day at work.
What percentage of GDP do you think is like defense spending? Just out of curiosity. Your number.
I think it's around. Oh, now I'm going to just search it and answer you.
Oh
It's
no,
like
that's
32%,
cheating. That's
right?
cheating. You can't do that. What's that?
Did I nail it? Did I nail it?
What number did you say?
I
I
said
didn't hear it.
I guessed at 32%.
No,
32%.
it's not that. No, it's way lower than that. It's a
32% of
3.1%.
government spending is defense spending. And what is
Yes.
the actual number?
It like the overall number is like 3.1%. It's not for lack of trying. Overall GDP, not the government spending. And it's not for lack of trying. It's just because our country's really big and makes a lot of stuff. So
Right. No, I think I do conflate the number that the government spends on the military industrial complex with overall GDP. So I may do that as part of a conversation, but that 3.1% is still significant.
Oh yeah, no, it's huge. Like of the United States economy, it is massive.
Yeah.
So like that, it's to keep in mind. Like I just want because you've thrown it out a couple times in a couple shows that like, oh, this is a big percentage of our GDP, like bomb making is. And I was like, well, like I want to look it up, and I had it open, and I was like, let me see what it is, and this is about 3.1% in 2023. So
I do. I think I would definitely concede to conflating those two numbers as a percentage of government expenditures versus the percent that it is of the U.S. economy. I'm sure that I've conflated them in the past because even in my brain right now, I want to conflate them more. I don't want to unconflate them. I'm resistant to it.
Yeah, and so it's better living through explosives.
Well, worldwide.
Yeah, I mean,
there was a song like "What take all of our guns, baby, and let them explode up into space" or something like that. That I was born to be wild. Something.
Yeah, and let's see. Someone's asking for a source. I'm gonna see if I can link them to the thing. I just closed it out. But anyway, we probably should go back in a minute.
But one of the greatest libertarians of all time has a great quote, Kevin.
Okay, what is it?
If we make more bombs, the GDP goes up, particularly if we explode them. Do you know who said that?
Who said that?
One of the Koch brothers. Charles Koch.
Charles Koch. Sounds about right.
Sounds like him, right?
I like something.
It sounds like me. Because I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. I actually, quick. I promise we'll go back in a sec. But one of my the thing that kind of got into my head about libertarianism is Ron Paul, and he started talking about. I was like, yeah, people think that going to war helps the economy. That it is, that it's what got us out of the Great Depression, and that it's good for us overall. But how on earth is it that we can take our resources, take our time, our money, our wealth, our materials, build stuff, send it overseas and blow it up? How is that good for the economy? How does that help us be wealthier and more stable in the long term? It doesn't. And it's a lie that keeps getting repeated.
It's got to be a lie, right? Like an unexploded bomb is actually an asset, right? So we have gone from thinking of things as assets to believing that the metric of growth in GDP is more important than the growth in wealth accumulation. And people are buying it, and it drives me crazy. You and I and Ron Paul and Chase Oliver can all make this point, but people don't hear it. They don't understand it. So how do we broaden that out? How do we get more people to understand it? Like we keep saying it, there was a time when we talked about accumulation of wealth in American society as ultimately the most important thing,
Yeah.
That was the ticket to the middle class. That was the ticket of upper middle class. It was a ticket out of poverty. And now we just talk about growth, right? Growth. Like the Amazon stock chart, because it worked for Amazon.
It is
It's
part
a
of it.
bad
GDP is, well, I don't know. Like I'm not as negative on GDP as you, but like but it's not the only thing, right? Like it's not the only measure that matters. It is like a measure that can be a proxy for success, but there are ways in which it can be manipulated into not really reflecting the success
Sure.
and wealth and
But if we
prosperity
don't
of a nation.
net out things like sure, and that's fair. But if we don't net out things like credit card debt and other forms of short-term debt that people are using to consume, and we just say, "Hey, look, GDP is doing great," that to me is an issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean
Okay.
that's part of it, right? And it's just a matter of like, can you
Yeah.
manage and balance that? And there's also like types of production that doesn't count towards GDP and gray market stuff, and yeah, all sorts of other
Yeah.
factors. And again, is it being used to, if it's being used to like just spend money and not in a productive way, that doesn't really matter. If it ends up being a wealth multiplier in the way that the Keynesians intend, then great, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah, the Keynesians have won this round though, Kevin. Let's be honest.
Yeah, no,
They're up. They're up. They're holding all the cards.
yeah. But anyway, we should probably go back. We're gonna talk about TikTok ban.
We
Yeah,
better
we'll talk
talk about that. My
talk about
God.
that. That's hot topic right now. But we'll go back in
It
5,
is.
4, 3, 2. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. I'm here. And look, I believe we've talked about this on a previous show, but look, the government wants to get its hands into everything. And so one of the things they want to get their hands into right now is they want to I don't know that it's actually end up banning TikTok, but they want to force it to change ownership here in the United States so
Right.
that they can use its awesome spyware to track
Yeah,
American
basically.
citizens.
Like, hey, you can't use your technology to manipulate the opinions of Americans. We want to do it.
We want to do it, right? Like they'll force the sale of TikTok. They'll buy a controlling share. They'll implant some CIA kind of operative, and then they will be using all of its awesome spyware to collect data on the American citizen. They're just jealous of its effectiveness. That's it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's right. And so folks like Thomas Massey and Rand Paul have had some good statements on this, and we're going to talk about those in a minute. But like the crux of it is basically this: is the president and the commerce secretary can say, like, if a foreign adversary owns certain type of like websites or apps, that they can require the sale of those assets owned by a foreign adversary to the someone in the United States. I mean, like, it's not quite like nationalizing them, but it can force their sale, and if they don't sell their stake in the company, then they can ban their use in the United States. And the law like kind of leaves open enough that interpretation that it is not specifically limited to TikTok. And you can't really write a law specific to a company, but
Right.
they're
Well, you would
giving themselves
imagine
the
that,
power
but
to, yeah. I mean, like, I know they do sometimes, but like they can't, I forget there's a term for this, but they can't legally like target a specific company or individual. But in doing so, it means that they're giving themselves the power um to regulate all sorts of companies. Thomas Massey called it a Trojan horse. They're
yes.
going to be able to ban all sorts of websites, apps, whatever, anything operating in the United States, but and not even necessarily limited to a foreign adversary. But I've seen pointed out like, well, there's Saudi investors in X, so like, does this fall under the purview of like what they're trying to regulate and capture and
Yes,
possibly take control of now? Well, yeah, I mean
that's what they want. Elon Musk has arguably, if you don't want to buy into a fixed game show theory, is a little bit of a thorn in the side of what they think social media should be.
yeah.
X as a brand seems to have crossed the line with them as far as wanting less regulated speech. They're not exactly a free speech platform, but they're better. They're a little bit wilder, and guys, it's way funnier than Facebook. There's way more stuff going on.
That
We've
is
got like
is it?
50 viewers on Twitter right now and or X, and you know, I don't know, 20 viewers on Facebook and our other things. So
Yeah,
Twitter is kind of happening. It's pretty popular. So you know, that's a threat to a system of control.
yeah. And again, like talking about like going back to the principled side of this is like regardless of what a company is doing, who it's owned by, etc., like is it appropriate for a government to step in and try to take control here or to force a sale here, even if they're doing something we don't necessarily like? Because I get it. There are ways in which social media can be unhealthy. And let's throw it out there, Tim, because like the thing that freaks people out is TikTok like put out a push notification asking people to like call their representative because there's a threat to ban TikTok. Actually, let me find the exact. TikTok is at risk of being shut down in the US. Call your representative now. Right? They put out a push notification for this. And people freaked out like, "Oh, China can like call people to political action all of a sudden." And again, it's not exactly China, it's ByteDance that definitely there's some shady stuff going on, but like that I think freaks people out more than the spyware part of it.
People are Kevin. People are incredibly reactive to China. We're at a point where we're funding uh, military build up in Taiwan. I mean, there. I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad idea either. Like, but people are very reactive to China. It's a tool of the zeitgeist to manipulate excited reactions. So sure. Like, look, China's attacking us with TikTok. Like, that's a pretty good narrative for the government, for people to buy into more government, right? Like, China is attacking your kids with TikTok. Help save our kids from TikTok. I mean,
Won't
honestly, I
someone
want to
think of the
send,
children?
yeah, yeah, I want to send money to the government. Like, save my kid from TikTok. Like, my kid doesn't really like TikTok. Save my wife from TikTok. She watches all sorts of videos on that thing, man. It drives me nuts, you know. I'm sure they have her credit card. They're going to start buying stuff for her. Like her social credit score is going to go in the toilet. I mean, it's just, I'm terrified. Protect my wife from TikTok, you know. And plus, she watches those anti-cop, the police audit videos. Oh my God, nobody needs to watch those. Just
Oh
kidding. If
my
you get a chance, watch the police audit videos. They're awesome.
yeah.
Anyway,
No,
yeah,
yeah, there's a bunch of interesting ones out there. And so just to be like to give the most up to date on this, I realized like this did pass the House like by a lot.
it
It was
did.
352 to 65. Like it was a lot.
Kevin, there's some wildly strange bedfellows on this deal, though. That in that 62 people, right? Like AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene, people that like. I would argue that both of them, in their own way, want to be participate in a less authoritarian government, even though they both fail miserably when it comes down to the final solutions of a less authoritarian government. So I don't know. I would like to see in your face when I said that. But anyway,
Yeah. Like, interesting choice there.
yeah, but it's very interesting, Buffalo. And then, of course, we have Thomas Massey, our probably, I would say, arguably the most libertarian congressional representative going. And
Yeah.
again, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, AOC. I don't know how Matt Gaetz voted, but I would suspect he probably voted against it based on him being somewhat anti-authoritarian. And look, guys, the U.S. government has all sorts of power to spy on you without TikTok. I don't know that we should worry about it. They don't need TikTok too. also.
Yeah. Well, they're not asking for more spying, Tim. They're just saying they don't want the Chinese Communist Party to spy on us. That's all they're doing. It's nothing nefarious, Tim. Just they're saving us from China. That's all
Yeah.
that's happening here.
So look, if you don't want a Chinese spy app on your phone, don't download TikTok.
Don't download it. Yeah, it's fine.
Don't download it. Just say no. Just know that literally the concerns are real. Like in a sense, it is a spy app. It records keystrokes. It records all sorts of information about your behavior.
Stuff, yeah.
Yeah,
and like what you're interested in and patterns. Like, is it like
yeah.
I don't even think that it's weird because like I see politicians talk about the spying thing. I think the thing that freaks a lot of intellectuals out, like again, people who are like, in my mind, like liberal and reasonable folks, like on the left and the right, and they're like, oh, China could like manipulate the algorithms to like make it so that we can't talk about Taiwan. And what if they decide to invade the island and all you get served are like anti-Taiwan messaging? And like, what if that happens? Like, I don't know, like people don't just rely on TikTok though. They go to other places. They go to Twitter. They just search stuff in Google. They they go to Facebook. Like sorry, like if you're solely relying on TikTok for your news, like get help. Like do better. You shouldn't be doing that. It's bad.
But I do think that there is like you're going to find content on TikTok that you're not going to find on YouTube. You're going to find takes on TikTok that are not available in the mainstream media. That makes sense. I'm not saying that they're right necessarily, but also like, as the conspiracy theorist that I am, there was parts of TikTok that I enjoyed when I was regularly doing it. I did kind of give up on it because like, they should pay me for my data more, and they banned me unfairly for doing a live when I was having conversations with people.
Wow.
Yeah, but I mean, they lifted the ban, but it's kind of had a mass reporting feature. So if like 2 or 3 people reported you, you got an automatic ban, and you could try to fight it, and then you would not be able to do a live for a month. And it was just really annoying. So I don't know if they've lifted those prescriptions, but there are.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a bunch of there's a bunch of like strange policies that they enact on the platform. They ban people randomly, and it like a lot of it I think is like bot driven, like as in like it's all automated, and they have some issues with that. But like, and again, I don't expect or need a platform to be perfect. Like again, the fundamental like principle for me here is like if you're worried about Chinese propaganda, right? If you're worried about people manipulating, the opinions of Americans, I think you need like that type of like thought process comes from a fundamental distrust of liberty. Like that thought process comes from like people are too stupid. Like you rubes out there are too dumb to be able to discern what the truth is. Like it goes back to the fake news thing, but this one's bipartisan because like China's involved. Like, but it goes back to like the same thing Facebook was doing, the same thing Twitter was doing. You people are too stupid to understand what the truth is, so we're going to suppress the fake news for you. Tim, agree or disagree?
No, like you're on point there. It goes to the emotional the emotional infants that we've made of Americans, right? Like we can control them by making them upset. And this is a red team criticism, right? That China is a major danger to your freedoms. Now, China wants to make stuff and sell it to us. That's what they want to do. Now, do they have a military might? Are we going to have a problem in Taiwan? Yeah, those things are real. But like also, there's a certain amount of paranoia that gets forced on everyone when they participate in the mainstream political narratives. And that's how I feel about China. I think that there's a much more reasonable, rational approach. I don't like when they buy opinions from celebrities, which I feel as though China has paid for some favorable press from celebrities, but also they want to sell us stuff. That's how that goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they do want to do that.
Advertising, bro.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of a lot of what it is, right? They want to participate in the global economy in some ways. I mean, the government is nefarious, and like I don't want to dismiss that because I think that the government of China is awful, like legitimately one of the worst in the world. They're bad, but there's a lot of like companies who are just trying to make money and do fun stuff, right? Like That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to participate in capitalism like the rest of them. And if their government would stop being so gosh darn awful, we could go to like cooperating with our our Chinese friends across the ocean there. Like we could and around the world. Like it's like the government is what makes that relationship terrible. And this is a fight between two governments that is interfering with like peace, prosperity, cooperation, and entertainment between like two people who would have a lot more mutual interest if it weren't for the fact that psychopaths are running their states.
I'm so proud of you right now. That was beautiful.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thought you'd appreciate that.
Yeah. Hey, just so you know, I was going to throw a curveball at you. I think we're running out of time. I
You got
still
like a
wanna throw
minute
it
and a half
at you.
left.
Yeah. Hey, Trump won the Super Bowl, dude. 9-0, man. It was epic. Like, lawfare lost. How do you feel about those statements?
We don't have time to fully get into them. Yeah, but like you're talking about like the ballot thing.
Yeah, but I want the WYSL audience to know that the Freedom Variant is happy that Trump won a big, huge Supreme Court victory. Kevin and I will hash it out after the show.
We're gonna talk about it, and I agree with you. I think the court was right on this one, and I think we talked about it in the show. Like Colorado was messing around. They shouldn't have done that. It was a bad decision. And I'm glad the states that are trying to keep him off the ballot are kind of getting slapped down a bit. It was it's never should have been the way to handle this thing.
Never. I mean, you actually have to convict them of something. You have arguably when we talk about it after the show. But guys, I'm happy Trump won a big victory. Even the liberal justices made what I feel is a correct ruling. And so congratulations, Trump. You're on the ballot in Colorado, New Hampshire, and I believe it was Illinois or Ohio that managed to get him off the ballot. So
yeah. All right. But we'll have to talk about that after the show. Thank you, WYSL audience, for joining us. Have a great night, folks. Take care.
All right. I would put the camera back on and hopefully it works out.
Yeah, we'll say
it lags more when the camera's on, doesn't it?
It does, though. Yeah. It's all right, Tim. You're gonna get a new laptop, and everything's gonna be great.
Oh no, I got a new like
or
tower
desktop. You're gonna get a new tower.
You know what I mean? It's like the XPS 72,000 7th generation, 13,000 somethings, and like an NVIDIA turbo card, which is way better than the NVIDIA turbo card that I had on my last computer that probably burned it out. So, like I'm there. I've arrived. You know what I mean? It's going to happen. Or whatever. It's just like you need. I play chess on my computer in the morning. I read news on it in the evening. I compose my best tweets when I'm sitting at my desk. This little tiny laptop that I've got, just my Rode laptop, cannot handle this kind of pressure. No. It just can't do it. It's sad. It's cute though, and it was cheap. You know what I mean? But it is what it is. It's cute and cheap, and therefore it doesn't work very well.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Let's jump into the decision a little bit more.
Sure. Let's do it.
Yeah. I generally agree with this. I thought it was the right decision. That was way out of bounds for Colorado to try to keep them off a primary ballot, and like their reasoning for doing so, that like essentially he had attempted an insurrection and therefore, per the 14th Amendment, he was ineligible for federal office. Like, no, he hadn't been convicted of anything. I don't think it's like clear that like he met the definition in the same way that they meant when people literally took up arms against the government in the Civil War. That's a bit different.
Yeah, and it was my understanding that in Colorado they used a civil preponderance as far as an interpretation of the law. So that's where civil law, to me, it has like they use the civil interpretation of the law. So it means by the preponderance of evidence, we think he may have been an insurrectionist. That's
right.
Not an adjudication of a crime. That's a problem for me. That was a problem for me. Like,
No, right.
try to stay philosophically consistent.
Right. And basically what they it was 9-0 decision, but there's some justices who disagreed too, basically saying that like, well, the majority essentially said, well, Congress needs to like clarify this law. Like it never actually it's not a self-executing like amendment. They need to clarify like, okay, if we want to ban someone, let's get specific about like what is the threshold for like committing an act of insurrection that would ban someone from like holding federal office, and then what federal offices does this apply to? Like you want to do this, like it's got to be like made into law. The liberal justices are like, well, it doesn't really meet that threshold, but Congress shouldn't have to make a law for this. That's basically what their disagreement was, like super quickly.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair interpretation. And look, it offended me that they tried to do it. It offended me that they used a civil preponderance. I in no way think that January 6th was an insurrection. It would be hard to if people were convicted of insurrection, which no one has been. It would be hard to also simply just convict Donald Trump of insurrection without tying it all together into a conspiracy and actually getting some sort of conviction. Now, according to what I read on the ruling, Congress is the one that would have to, if I understood it correctly, present him with those charges. That's never happened.
Right.
Before, like I don't even know
Well,
if, like,
not
a
what's
regular court.
so it's not only that it's not really that, it's more that like the way the amendment was written, it didn't have law to accompany like the specific like mechanisms for like carrying it
All right,
out,
I got
right?
you.
So I mean, like that is also a way for Congress to be able to like, because they could impeach and in fact sort of tried to didn't try to, they impeached him again in January of 2021 for that situation, but didn't convict.
Right.
And that was one way they could have kept him off the ballot, disqualified him. The Congress did not carry through. But you could, if for instance Congress wanted to have a specific way to keep people out of federal office who were participants in an insurrection, we'll just keep it away from January 6th, but some sort of insurrection, they would have to define what specifically that means, and then what offices that prohibits them from running for, and then like clarify like how is a judge to determine if someone is guilty of this crime and like is able to receive that punishment.
Yeah. Okay, so that all
Yeah.
makes sense. I mean, and I like that.
That's how I
I'm going to
understood
take
it.
this opportunity, Kevin, to hawk my very first product. Well, it's not my product. Check this out. I've got a funny story.
All right.
This is what your kids grow into, Kevin. Trust me. All right. So, my kid has a hankering for sour candies, right? But I've tried to coach him away from heavy duty sugar. So, you get your sour candy, you get your sugar, and basically it's just a sour coating on a pile of gelatinous sugar, right? So my kid developed a product, Kevin, and
All right.
I'm eating some of it right now. Check this out. We made a little picture of him in one of his wrestling gears. Like this is him as he won. He was about to win a match where he was guaranteed to wrestle for third and fourth. So I took this picture. He made what are called sour pretzels, and honestly, I got to be honest, they're better than you would like a 17-year-old kid coming up with. They have they're packed with flavor. B, like I don't know if you like sour things. You're kind of young. I didn't like sour things, but these things are actually pretty good. And like I noticed tonight, especially, they go pretty good with like they're delicious.
Nice. So, that's cool, man. Like good for him making that stuff and make something tasty. It's awesome.
And he's like so passionate about it. I'm like, I'm gonna just ask him for like a $10 donation. And he's like, Dad, if they give you any money at all, I'll figure out how to ship them to them, and then they can tell me whether they like them or not. And I'm like, That's silly. You're just silly. But whatever. If anybody has interest in them, let me know. We'll figure it out. Not only that, like you get a cool picture of my kid, and you get a mason jar with a fresh lid. I mean, you
Wow.
can't lose.
God damn.
So, any amount of money, inbox me, email me, whatever. We'll work it out. Now, does this violate the terms of service to Facebook?
No, you're allowed to
Get
sell
arrested
stuff
or something?
The police are already on their way, Tim.
Oh,
I'm supposed to check a box
every time. Like,
yeah. No, you're allowed. I'm supposed to check a box if this contains advertising. But yeah, it's not exactly selling something, so I think we're fine.
Yeah, I'm asking for like a donation or a negotiation or something like that. Not even, not even really.
Yeah, well, that's how they sell
a
marijuana
sale,
too.
if you will.
So that's how they sell marijuana too, Tim.
Well,
like, hey,
it's
we're not selling
not
weed.
marijuana.
We're just like selling T-shirts, and then like this is a free gift that comes along with it. And if you want to make a donation with it, great. But
Yeah, that's
how
kind of
they
what
get
I'm
them
doing.
out.
Well, I'm asking for a donation or a negotiation, or if you're interested, we'll get the product to you. You can tell us what you think. I think we've got it to where he started. It was a little too sour, and he didn't. So I said, you got to do something to kind of like either more salt, more sugar, and he kind of added both, and it actually really works, in my opinion. And I'm a weight loss guru, Kevin, as I probably mentioned in previous shows. I'm not averse to this snack. It's a low calorie, not a lot of sugar, not a lot of salt. It's, relatively healthy. I don't want to say healthy because it's not healthy, but it's like a decent snack. Plus, for wrestlers, it'll make your mouth water. You could spit that stuff out and like lose weight fast. So just,
Is that a trick? I don't know the tricks
Oh,
of the
no,
trade
that's a
there.
big trick in wrestling, right? Like that's one of the reasons why you got a 1/10 of a pound to shed, right? And you don't really want to run and exercise right before a big match. So you just kind of do something that makes your saliva get going, and you can lose a 1/10 of a pound in a few minutes.
Wow. All right.
Yeah. Now with these pretzels, it'll be a little bit gross spitting them out, but you guys know what I mean. No, he does not sell THC enhanced pretzels, John. No. My kid is like, he's nothing like me, man. He's like straight laced. Whoops. Hope he doesn't watch the show, but he's very straight laced. He's into exercise. He's doing a great job. I'm a little bit different, even though I think I'm still a decent human being.
Yeah, I'd say
I don't
so.
know. What's your take on that, Kevin?
Yeah. On you being a decent human being? Yes.
Yeah.
Tim, you're a decent human
right.
being. I think so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have any other news that we should talk about? I did have a bunch of I pulled up a bunch of articles. Were you expecting me to throw you that curveball about Trump just being like, bring it out of nowhere?
No, that's fine though. At least that one I'm familiar with. You throw stuff out sometimes like what the fuck are you talking about? I've got to like Google it quick. That was fine though. I knew about that one.
Honestly, I love the look on your face when I. Yeah.
What else you got? Like we do like
Bitcoin
one or two more.
Is at an all-time high, Kevin. I think
it is.
Yeah. Right. So Bitcoin is having. Yeah, so it's at an all-time high. There's a lot of demand for it right now. My investment strategy is like, it got me really tempted. It's like, is it time to buy more? Like, what?
Buy high, sell low.
That's
what you do.
I should probably buy more.
Yeah, it's
the only way I can make sure I lose money. Yeah, it's the only way I can make sure I lose money. I told you my accountant was like, you're reporting $1,000 loss on Bitcoin? Like, nobody loses money on Bitcoin. I'm like, bro, here's the math. And he's like, all right, well, that's pretty rare. Good job. Like he was really impressed. Like I think it was 2017, 2018, something like that. I managed to lose $1,000 on Bitcoin. Fantastic.
Amazing.
Yeah. Now, one of the good things about Bitcoin is you can, at least right now, lose money on Bitcoin, do a wash sale, and it's completely legal. Did you know that?
No,
Do you know what a wash sale is, by the way?
I don't know actually. I was going to ask you, like,
Okay.
what is that?
At the end of the year, if you have yeah. Okay. So check this out. It's illegal to do with stocks, right? So if you have a stock that's actually an absolute loser, right? You can sell it and buy it back. And like, let's say you sell it on December 31st, you take the loss for that year. You buy it back on January 1st, and then it appreciates because you had, reason to believe in the stock. You can take the loss and let the gains run, and you don't ever have to report the gains, right? Until you sell it later. So wash sales are illegal, but with Bitcoin, you can actually, like, if your Bitcoin is low on December 31st, you could sell it, take the loss, buy it back on January 1st. You can buy it back later in the day on December 31st if you want to. And it's a great way to maintain exposure to an investment that you think is, decent. And basically take a paper loss, right? Which you can only do with Bitcoin. And they're actually making a law to try to prevent people from doing that. Joe Biden, I think, mentioned it in his State of the Union speech.
Specifically
But of
getting rid
course,
of
he
that.
prefaced everything by saying, but only for the wealthy. So us poor guys can still do wash sales with crypto.
All right.
But my
Well,
$1,000 loss in 2017 wasn't just a wash sale. It was just I lost money on it. And it was like, I need that money that I have in Bitcoin. So I spent it. Does that make sense?
yeah. All right. Anyway,
Hello?
I think,
Are you there?
yeah.
Yeah, I
Can
lost
you
you.
hear me again? Yeah. Well, you got to pause your video again, Tim.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit hard to reply to stuff. But I think on that note, though, we'll call it a night. We'll call it a night. And we'll end the show here.
Good show. Thank you. Thanks everybody for the comments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
Well, have a good night, folks. Take care.